Mike Nelson. I'm one of the co-conveners of the local chapter of the Internet Society. We've got a leadership team of about 6 or 7 of us who organize various events, usually 1 or 2 every month. My co-convener is David Bjorst, right here, and Paul Brigner. A number of other people in the room are regular members of our group. I want to just do a couple of quick things before we get started. Particularly want to thank the U.S. State Department for sponsoring the Freedom Fellows who are here today to talk to you. I want to thank Georgetown University's Communication, Culture, and Technology program for providing a space and helping us advertise this event. And I particularly want to thank our moderator, Rich Kauzlarich, who's a former ambassador, long-time career at State Department, and he has the hard job of introducing all our speakers and then leading the discussion or coordinating the discussion with them and with you. This is an audience participation event. This is not meant to be a lot of lectures. This is a chance for you to ask questions, for all of us to talk together about the future of censorship and the future of freedom of speech online. Again, I want to thank you all for being here and invite you, if you have other ideas for the Internet Society about future events, to talk to me, talk to David, talk to Paul, or to just send us email on our website, isoc-dc.org. So, Ambassador Kauzlarich.
Thanks very much, Mike. It's really a pleasure to be here. I'm going to try to keep my remarks short. I will urge the panelists to be not quite as short, but say about 4 minutes apiece, because we do want to make this an interactive event. I feel like, in a way, Mike, this is the away game from the one that we did over at George Mason a few months ago, where we looked at the Internet as a disinfectant for corruption. And we had a panel plus an Azerbaijani journalist who was in Moscow. So we're kind of looking at the flip side of that issue here today, which is going to be, fine, you've got people who know how to use the Internet as a disinfectant. What's the censorship issues that arise, and are we looking at a game of cat and mouse where one response creates another, and how do you deal with that? So what I'm going to do, with your permission, is simply get out of the way. I will just say a few words about each speaker as they go in turn. We'll start with Dlshad. Dlshad's an activist and an IT engineer from Syria, and I can't think of a more appropriate way to start this discussion today, given everything that's going on back in your home country, than to turn it over to you, and then I'll introduce each speaker in turn. So we'll start with Dlshad.
Okay. First of all, hi. I'm coming from Syria, which it is on the high lines on the school. Oh, sorry, in the news. Well, introduction. First of all, Syria has this bad, history with the internet. The internet started in Syria in 2000, and at the same time, we had this dictator regime, with this military regime, which will not allow, for example, under the emergency law in Syria, you are not allowed to group 5 people to discuss. So the military, they can attack you and arrest you if you are just only 5 people who just wanted to group and talk about anything. So we don't have civil society, we don't have any kind of communication between those activists, journalists on the ground in Syria. So we found that internet is the best way for us to use, and exactly to rely on it for media, for journalism, and also for the human rights activities. So all the human rights activists in Syria, they are using the internet. In 2005, we saw this kind of censorship, surveillance, attack against the internet. One of those things that happened, it was after the revolution started, March 2011, we saw that the regime started to suspend the internet in many areas, like you can see here in Daraa city for more than 40 days. Imagine full of province without internet for 40 days. The same things in Homs for more than 25 days. Douma city, every Thursday and Friday they block the internet in many provinces and cities, so you cannot live webcast the demonstrations and the attacks against the people. And here you can see that the reports have come from Google showing the number of logins from Syria, how it's become, how it's stopped. The problem is that surveillance, a lot of companies, they are providing the regime with this kind of technology so they can they can make the internet as bad as it is now in Syria. So we can see that intelligence they have the power to go inside any ISP and do whatever they want. The Syrian regime, they start using Blue Coat, which it is American company. Atomico, Ariaspa from Italia, Ericsson, and December 2011, Sophos in UK, they said that they terminated their contract with Syria, but what? Now the regime is using this kind of solution. So we had to figure out and to solve those problems. This is some kind of attacks that Syrian regime is doing against the people. As you see, we have Syrian Electronic Army. I don't know if you read about it. It's a very big group of hackers and pro-regime supporters. They are doing this kind of attacks. DDoS attack, I am the web administrator for website, which it is the Violence Documentation Center in Syria. So they are doing DDoS attack every time. We have some kind of Trojans. If you back to CNN reports, you can see a lot of reports talking about the malware and Trojans that the Syrian is developing it. There is Facebook flood against many American and Western pages. Internet cafes, we have 12 people, they get arrested from the internet cafe. So we have DNS forward, fake SSL, a lot of it. We have DPI, deep inspection, also. A lot of, they block the SSL from time to time. Also, we have blocking Tor over, DPI. Censorship, what we can document, or what we could document it is we have this amount of websites, which it is blocked. Kurdish website, opposition, Lebanese site, media site, Islamic proxy, etc., etc. Censorship, the Arabic web, imagine, Wikipedia is blocked in Syria. We have also, just 2012, the regime removed the block against the social network. Now VPN is blocked also, L2TP, IPsec, so we only have SSH, sometimes SSTP, so we can use it in Syria. So for that, what we did, also, we have a lot of arrested bloggers, they are in jail, like Tal Dosari, Rezan Razawi, she was in the jail, a lot of names. For that, we developed an operating system, its name is Virtus Linux. This Virtus Linux is using this kind of technologies, OpenVPN over SSH, SSTP, etc. This kind of technology, so the Syrian can just install it on the flash disk and use it. We included it with a lot of tools like TrueCrypt, BitGene with OTR, GSTM for SSH tunnel, Juniper Skype over SSH, and a lot of tools that Syrian, they can just use it and start doing their job and then finish it. This is exactly what we are doing in Syria. This is links if you are interested. Thank you.
Very good. And I hope the panelists will excuse me if I do not pronounce your name properly. I will do my best, but with a last name like Kauzlarich, I don't get too excited. Pronounce my name.
Yes. Sometimes you don't spell it right.
Well, that's another problem. Next we'll have Prakash. I hope that's close enough from India. I think this is going to be a particularly interesting discussion given your background of how Indian government policy has influenced the free flow of information. But you're an expert in cyber law, and we look forward to your presentation.
Okay, I'll try and focus on the future of censorship rather than just the present. So as I see things, censorship that happens is basically can be categorized into state censorship, both legal and extra-legal, and this is documented well by things like the Google Transparency Report. State-aided private censorship. This can happen through laws that are overbroad and aid private censorship unwittingly, and sometimes can happen in an extra-legal fashion. So say someone complains to the police takes action on the basis of that complaint, but the police is in fact not authorized to take action. And this happened recently in December in India when the police asked DNS provider to suspend cartoonsagainstcorruption.com. There can be private censorship. So a lot of this happens, say, for example, through copyright, and some of it can happen extra legally as well. So, and lastly, of course, societal censorship, and this is usually extra legal. Just quickly, I'd like to point out a few issues right now, complications with internet governance. Right, there is a need for enhanced cooperation between governments right now, and I'd like to underscore this because the status quo just will not do, and the longer that we adopt a status quo's position, the stronger the reaction will be, and the stronger the measures taken in opposition would be. So, for instance, India right now is having problems with some investigations relating to terrorism, and they find that the mutual legal assistance treaties aren't really working to their benefit, aren't working fast enough, and these are just mere procedural things. But the reaction can sometimes be as severe as asking BlackBerry and Google and all kinds of other service providers to physically relocate their servers to India. Okay, and if we don't want to provoke those kinds of reactions, and this is happening throughout the world, not just in India, we have to focus a little bit on enhanced cooperation. And then, of course, is the problem of multi-stakeholders, and the problem is basically how do we go beyond nation states on the issue of internet governance, when what we know and the only thing we seem to know right now are nation states. So governments necessarily have to come forth and agree to give up some of what they see as their sovereign rights for the greater good of an open, free, and importantly, seamlessly global internet that simultaneously allows both for the safeguarding of civil and political liberties, as well as innovation, trust, and security, and not without leading to a balkanized internet, which I think is a real fear, given the way, for instance, Iran is asking for only .ir addresses to be used by domestic companies, and the way for instance, even Twitter and Google are allowing for country-level censorship. So, and this is especially so and this is especially problematic, rather, in a situation where international treaties, everything from say the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and ICSCR and ICCPR exist, but most nations of the world are parties to these, but yet we see how far these rights are actually implemented. And so how do we get nation states to give up some of their rights when existing agreements to this effect haven't really worked out so well in practice? Future problems, and I'll take around 2 minutes on this. So right now, most of our focus, including in India, is how to protect intermediaries, how to ensure that they have legal safeguards and can continue being intermediaries, especially given the central role that they occupy in the internet. But as I see things, the future will also be much more about how do we navigate. How do we ensure that there are certain duties for intermediaries, just as there are duties laid upon states, just as there are limits laid upon nation states, we have to have limits laid upon intermediaries as well. And the thinking behind this is that corporations are as crucial as the state online. They're kind of quasi-state online. Given the immense role that they play. Even if you own your own servers, even if by any chance you launch your own ISP, still you have to necessarily go through other people's properties. You need to be able to for instance, get bandwidth from level 3 or something. You need to go through other people's servers in order to be able to communicate with your own. And so it's not constitutions that rule in this world. It's contract law and it's property law. So offline, we've settled on certain kinds of limitations on these laws by, for instance, saying that in a restaurant you can't discriminate, even in a private restaurant, you can't discriminate on the basis of say the color of someone's skin. Yet online we don't have any such laws. Based on pressures from a senator, a financial company might just stop transacting with a website, and all of this is completely unregulated. So they have the position of the state, but have none of the limitations that we have on states. And this is extremely tricky because you don't want to be able to say, for instance, to Google that you can't impose these kinds of limitations on your terms of service. You can't say, for instance, that certain kinds of that artistic nudity is fine on some of our services, but not on others. Okay, so this is a really difficult area to go through, but I think this is something we have to think about for the future.
Very good. Thank you very much. Next speaker will be Gabriel Kambou from Burkina Faso, a journalist, and your experience, I think, will be very enlightening in terms of how in Africa the internet is being used. So much attention gets paid elsewhere in the world, and certainly in the United States we don't pay as much as we should attention to how the internet is used in your area.
Okay, thank you. I'm Gabriel Kambou from Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso is a West African country. I'm a journalist by training, and now I'm a reporter for human rights and freedom of speech. I would like to begin by saying that after its independence, Burkina Faso has experienced many military regimes leading to human rights and individual liberty violation. This small country, classified among the poorest of the world, has, however, a very rich history and experience as far as struggle for human rights and freedom of speech are concerned. As young people, we are an active part to this struggle for the respect and the protection of human rights in Burkina Faso. A few years ago, mobilization and sharing information was hardly possible, especially when there are threats and arrests. But today, thanks to information, communication technology, ICT, and especially thanks to the Web 2 tools, such as Facebook, Netlog, blogs, the mobilization and sharing of information are very noticeable. And nowadays, a simple message on Facebook is sufficient to gather a large number of people. And so there it is a large hope in this sense for the internet audience, especially as far as the rank of young people is concerned. Indeed, many young people spend their day and time networking, sharing information, and watching and downloading videos. So it is for us in disorder to win these young people for the purpose of defending and promoting human rights, that we create a web TV which broadcasts basically only on human rights and freedom of speech. This web TV is called Droit Libre TV. It means right and freedom of speech TV. For us, it is a way to draw the attention of the young people in order to share the mission of neglect, of promotion, of the defense and protection of human rights. Another advantage is the progression of mobile internet. We are no longer obliged to go to cyber cafe to log on the internet. We can benefit from the network connection at home and everywhere thanks to the connection from mobile phone. So it is an important asset for the activists of human rights and freedom of speech. We are editing DVDs and books to educate the people in many colleges in Burkina Faso. It's a new experience for us, which will begin on July. Yes. And for us, social networks are the way of democratizing information. Access to information is no longer the prerogative of a given elite. From now on, every Burkinabe citizen who can read and write and who has access to internet can produce and broadcast information. For instance, the socio-military troubles that have shaken the Burkina Faso in the first term of 2011, many people shared information from Facebook, which had become a source of information for classical journalists. And in this respect, the live blogging that I had inaugurated in 2011 during the film festival on the human rights is getting more and more whispered and had also inspired some colleagues on neighboring countries. And it's allow broadcasting in your blog or Facebook page an event that is taking place. Yes, and no need to wait for the report of the classical media. So, and what are our difficulties in this new experience, in this new hope for Africa, for my country, Burkina Faso? The major difficulties we face in Burkina specifically are two kinds. Firstly, we have the problem of network connection. The internet coverage of the country is weak, and even those who have access to it face the problem of weak debit of connection to internet and the internet short. And this issue disturbs the initiative of bloggers and demotivates the net sufferers. Second, there are frequent power cuts, and the electricity network in Burkina Faso is not steady. Every year we undergo several power cuts that play havoc in the network devices and the serenity in the work. The peace we are expecting, to end my speech, the peace we are expecting for tomorrow will be built upon the sacrifice we are undergoing today. And you made the best choice by inviting us in the young generation education to human rights. And I'm very excited to be here and to learn about your experiences and to share what in Burkina Faso we are doing to promote human rights and to promote the use of internet to promote human rights and freedom of speech in our country. Sorry for my English.
No.
Thank you for your attention.
We'll go to another country that we really in the United States don't associate with everything we've been talking about, Cambodia. Sopheap Chak, who is Deputy Director of the Cambodian Center for Human Rights, and a human rights activist and a prominent local NGO leader. Over to you, please.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Today is my great pleasure to meet all of you and to share the experience or the perspective from Cambodia in relationship to the our topic on the future censorship and the free speech online. Before going to the free speech online, one may have to look at the offline situation. I mean, offline freedom of expression in Cambodia. the situation of freedom of expression in Cambodia is quite restricted because if we look at the media, all the TV, most of the radio and the printed newspaper is highly controlled by the government, and only few radio that have the voice of opposition or the human rights organization, and very few printed media, and mostly the foreign owned, the foreign newspaper are quite independent. So the platform for freedom of expression, for the civic engagement is quite limited, and one may say it may appear that the freedom of expression in Cambodia compared to the ASEAN country, its neighboring country, is quite better, but in fact we have to look at the freedom from fear. Like we can speak, like human rights organization can do some campaign and speak, but afterward what will be happen? So my organization where I come from, the Cambodian Center for Human Rights, we have documented and published a report, the Cambodian is gay and democracy is risk, is that we found out all the key pillars of democracy, including the member parliamentarians, the journalists, the media, the human rights activists, the lawyer especially, and the citizen are the key pillar of democracy are under threat. Like member parliamentarian, if you may heard, is the opposition member Mua Sopheap, Madame Mua Sopheap. She have been under charge and have because of her like a kind of lawsuit with the Prime Minister, and only her that can challenge with the Prime Minister. But then her case has not been responded by the court, but have been counter sued by the Prime Minister, and she have been charged. So you can see the member parliamentarian have been subjected to arrested, to be detained or sentenced by the court, and her lawyer who have been defended her case have been intimidated and dropped the case. So she have been on trial without lawyer. And third, the human rights activists who defend not only about the political situation, but for the human rights promotion have been under threat. Like many, although the trend of human rights situation in Cambodia have been changed from the late 90s, where political killing can be witnessed, human rights activists or media have been killed. The current situation, in 2000s, the situation had been changed by having no political killing, but then the charge, the court have been used to silence the advocates. And the current trend now is that it have been made, like between the court charge, the legislation have been applied, like the government have introduced the draft law on the association and NGO law, which try to put even more legitimate pressure on the human rights or kind of advocacy organizations. We can witness recently the killing of the activists as well. Like recently there is a prominent environmental activist have been killed, and the investigation have been done afterward right away by the government and involved with the military who have been involved with the case as well. And you can imagine how justice is prevailed when the conflicting party, the military, have been involved with the shooting of the man, the environmental activist who was patrolling the illegal logging area, have been also in the investigation committee, how justice is prevailed. So the government just say that it is personal dispute, nothing related with the environmental cause or human rights cause, and it's end. So I just want to draw the picture of how the freedom of expression offline is, and it attached with the freedom of expression online. Although we have not yet witnessed any intimidation on blogger or net citizens, activists, there have been some kind of case related to this online platform already. But I would call the current situation now as the while the freedom of expression offline is quite restricted, look at the online situation is more kind of digital democracy, which I call it, because people find the alternative platform of Facebook, blog, website, and other social media as a channel to voice their concern. As I myself, I'm blogger. I have the channel to express my idea freer, more freer than compared to the traditional media. And many human rights activists have started to use this new media platform to synthesize their campaign, their promotion of the human rights respect in the country. While I say that currently the situation of online freedom in Cambodia is quite, digital democracy, it is not yet, the future fate is not yet known. Because in the past, the government have blocked a few websites already, like if you know the Global Witness Report, the Family Tree. The Global Witness Report, Family Tree is indicating the kind of family line of the Prime Minister to the bottom, and in relation with the illegal logging, deforestation, and the government just blocked that side. And the government said publicly that anyone who will disseminate either online, either offline, printed, will be subjected to arrest. So the website of the Global Witness at that time have been blocked in Cambodia. We cannot access to the report anymore. And the government just denied that they do nothing with it. They have no role with that block. But we know very well who blocked that. And another website, Rehu.net, is a American designer, web designer. He saw the kind of half-naked lady sitting in front of the Angkor Wat, and this website had been considered as a impact on the gender in Cambodia, on women value, and on the culture. Like Angkor Wat is a kind of cultural heritage for Cambodians. So the Ministry of Culture stressed it very hard, and the government had blocked that site. And just recently, in the late 2011, all the blogs with the extension blogspot.com have been blocked in Cambodia. And until now, you cannot access, because in relation to the one of the pro-opposition party website called KI Media, they post the front page of their of its website. The left side is the hero with the all human rights activists, labor unionists, but on the right side is a kind of traitor with all the leading government officials. So the government find it very sensitive, and they just block all this blogspot.com website, and they at first the company prevail. When we click on the site, they say that there's it has been restricted on the request from the government. But later on, when the journalists interview the company again, and they change the description, like there's a technical error. So, and the government just say they have not involved, but we know it is they involved. So, in sum up, I just want to show that while I call it as the current situation a digital democracy, there's also concern that the government may start to censor the online platform, because the momentum now is the net citizen and the young start to use it, and we can see now the young start to communicate on Facebook. Previously we can see only social chatting, kind of daily talk, but now people start to communicate, posting video related to corruption, human rights violation. So this kind of thing is alert to the government that people are digital democracy and the right of net citizen is emerged. So it's pose a threat on the government, although now they did not take a very serious action, but they start to draft the cyber law, and they have the kind of order to make all the company to control, with the the online usage with the company. So the future of online freedom in Cambodia is quite concerning. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next we have Andreas Azpurua. Azpurua.
Pretty much.
Almost from Venezuela. Another country in the news. Even in America, sometimes we pay attention to countries in our own hemisphere, and I think Venezuela is one of them. But you are very much in the front line, working on not only human rights but the upcoming presidential elections, and trying to make sure people are networked in preparation for that. So we look forward very much to your comments.
Well, Venezuela is a country that not only some people may think that Venezuela has very limited access to the internet, so whatever happens online won't have a big impact to the citizens' life. While in fact many people don't have residential access to the internet, some estimates put 8 out of 10 internet users, and many people who really use the internet quite frequently and for important stuff in their life, or what they consider important, are people from poorer backgrounds in Venezuela, young people mostly, most of them students. So actually a lot of people use the internet. They just don't use it at home. They use it on Blackberries, they use it on mobile phones, and they use it in cyber cafes. And the numbers are quite impressive. It's actually very important for most of Venezuelans to have access to a cyber cafe, not as much to have a DSL line in your home. So we're talking about how's censorship working in the world, and how it's going to be. And I'm here to argue that direct censorship is not the only problem we should be discussing. I mean, like things like China does, like blocking websites just out of the sudden because they have some certain keywords, because it's on a blacklist. That sort of stuff does happen. But most countries right now are not looking into that too much. They're mostly looking into what, like Russia's doing, and my country to some degree as well. Well, perhaps more than just some degree, but you get my drift. So self-censorship is a huge problem in Venezuela and many countries with very, very weak rule of law. Self-censorship comes mostly from fear of reprisals, legal reprisals, huge fines, end up in jail, or you could just be attacked, or just complete arrest every single time, or stuff like really happens to journalists in countries where freedom of expression is compromised. So freedom of expression is not only online, like a completely different thing from what we express on the physical world. If I'm talking to you guys and I'm exercising my freedom of speech, that same freedom of speech could be used by a phone or by a text message or in a printed newspaper. So why wouldn't then the freedom of speech be used online? But some people, for some reason, think that freedom of expression or access to the internet are completely different rights. And as much as more of a life happens online, then more important it is for us to have a free access to the internet, because otherwise we won't be able to exercise a very important part of our freedom of expression. And not only freedom of expression, but freedom of association as well, and many other rights. So, right now in Venezuela, people are always online. People are tweeting a lot. People are using Facebook to incredible degrees. The Facebook penetration is, some estimates put it at 80% of internet users. Some estimates put it even higher. Venezuela and Brazil are really leading the way in the region. Twitter is hugely important. Politicians measure themselves in the number of followers they have on Twitter, rather on their audience or their how many votes they got in the last election. and it's really how people measure up many times in Venezuela, quite frankly. So if people can't express online, and if a lot of the political discourse is going online, like in my country, where people just run to the internet because of the self-censorship that was on the traditional media, because of all the reasons I just explained, then controlling the internet is just a very easy way to controlling public opinion and results of elections and whatever you can get. So, sorry. So the thing is, in Venezuela and in many countries, now that everybody has flooded the social media scape and the news websites are going everywhere, well, the same things that used to happen to traditional media are happening online. So people are censoring themselves, people are just changing the tone of their discourse just so that they don't have to be afraid of reprisals, they don't have to be afraid of repression, they don't have to be afraid of huge lawsuits. Things like, for example, in Venezuela, anonymous speech in mass media is completely forbidden, it's against the law. So that this includes the internet. So if you were to anonymously comment on a website, you could be liable for whatever you said. Actually, not for what you said, just by the fact that you said something without revealing your name. And of course, that's really hard to enforce. It's almost impossible to really make sure nobody speaks anonymously online. But it doesn't matter. That's not the point. The point is, the point is that if people are afraid of getting in trouble because they're speaking anonymously online, when they speak online, anonymously or not, they just measure themselves a lot more. It just takes somebody finding out who are you, when you said something that's uncomfortable. So I mean, if you just said something people didn't want to hear, you said it anonymously, it's trivial for the government to find out who you were and just get into trouble. So, and this is quite easy if around 80–90% of the population uses a state-owned telco, which, of course, then you don't need any court approvals or even to exercise pressure on telecommunication companies just to find out whose IP this was at this time. So I'm pretty much sure that the censorship of the future will be a very intelligent combination of the things we're seeing right now, but in perhaps with some new additions. And this will come probably from both private actors and public actors. I mean, from state actors. Everyone has a goal in the world, and everyone's trying to push it. The thing is, how far are these organizations going to go? I guess perhaps in the future we'll describe countries as, instead of democratic or undemocratic, we'll also add new categories like with open internet or with closed internet. Perhaps we'll see an open internet and some islands with individual internets with very little connection with the rest of the world. And those countries will be those that everybody talks about and comment on their policies and question them. So we'll probably see a lot of digital violence in addition to traditional violence, and I mean physical violence, just to stop people from speaking their word. And by digital violence, I mean hacking a website, defacing a website, harassment via electronic means, like whatever you would say on a physical space, but say it online. For example, if you hack to an NGO's NGO servers, you could delete case files, you could delete emails, you could really hamper their work just as much as you could hamper it by entering and forcing a lock and just taking out all those files away and destroying computers. Actually, most NGOs in countries with difficult situations, they just host all their files online just to prevent this kind of attack. If you hack their servers, then you destroyed everything, and they probably won't have any other backups like a web server. So, thinking that their website or their filing system online is secure, you'll probably come with a lot of attempts to cover dissenting voices. So instead of why get into the trouble of putting someone in jail, you can just cover his comments with thousands and thousands of comments supporting your point of view. So you just pay a lot of people, or you program a bot to just fill chat rooms, fill comment spaces, and fill social media with your opinion instead of that of the dissenting voices, misrepresenting the public opinion or the percentages of your opinion in your country. So, oh, taking too long. Sorry. And all to that, the fact that, I mean, censorship in the, like China does, like blocking websites, could be used in a more intelligent way, just when you exactly need it, surgically use it when you need it. So in a way, you wouldn't even realize that you're probably being under censorship. So yes, I think that for the democratic possibilities of the internet to actually come to terms and for the continuation of the hope that civil, political rights and human rights are empowering each one of us, our rights should be respected in the internet as much as they should be respected right now in the physical world.
Yeah, I sort of feel like as moderator, I'm being the censor here. So. But very, very good, very, very informative. I think I like that expression, digital abuse. I mean, I think when we go to Emin, Milli from Azerbaijan, who is our last speaker, I was the U.S. ambassador in Azerbaijan from '94 to '97, which was, believe it or not, before the internet. Can anyone remember that time?
Well, you got on the internet.
Like 100 years ago?
Barely.
You were the first virtual embassy.
Yeah, just barely. But Emin, and excuse me if I take a little more time than I did with others, has my deep personal respect for what he has gone through. And, Amnesty International, I think, correctly considers him a prisoner of conscience because of what he did on the internet. He ended up getting thrown into jail. Conditions that I think anybody, who's concerned about freedom of the internet would understand. So I'm really looking forward, to your presentation and just to make public, I think, the respect that I and many others have for you and what you're doing. So, thanks.
So thank you very much. First of all, I would like really to thank you because you're American ambassador who worked in Azerbaijan and now you're working in US in academic institution, and this is already a big inspiration for us because we had a case of one of the first American ambassadors, Koundjoro, staying in Azerbaijan, becoming citizen of Azerbaijan, becoming businessman, and becoming the member of the ruling party in Azerbaijan. So thank you very much for giving an example of a man who has chose something different, and resisted this temptation of what Azerbaijan became, I would say, the crafty autocracy 2.0, and I will tell now why. And then I thought, okay, that was maybe the beginning, and then we have the latest American ambassador who is now, just a week ago we have read the news, he became recruited by a Turkish company which is owned by Azerbaijan State Oil Company. So I want to thank you again. I again thought about you because we are friends on Facebook, and I felt like urged to write almost a thank you letter to you, for being so different. So, well, yes, that was short introduction. Well, from all presentations, and we have all this, now for several days, starting from Geneva, coming here to DC. It's really this internet freedom, it has really many dimensions, and we see that it is, certain aspects of it are very important in Syria, where it's about everyday physical survival for not one or two people, but hundreds of people. And on the other hand, there are other cases where, more educational aspect is important. My friend talked about, from Venezuela, talked about fear. I think what is very important is to understand that if we talk about censorship 2020, it's not just free or relatively free part of the world is advancing the agenda of freedom and human rights. It is also the autocracies, becoming more sophisticated, crafty, and as you said, they combine, a number of factors, of tools to curb the freedoms and freedom on internet. And for me, I basically differ between freedom on internet, offline or online. I think the cases we're experiencing now in Azerbaijan, they are showing actually that it is wrong to distinguish just between freedom online and offline, because it's the same freedom. And Azerbaijan, I think, is an interesting case. Our government claims, which may be true, that more than 50% of our population has access to internet. The president, in his statement, says that we are a free and democratic country because we have free internet. And as a blogger who was in jail, I can technically not contradict him, because internet is really free. And when they put people in jail, they don't put people in jail, or they don't blackmail them, put their sexual life online. They don't put us in jail saying, you have wrote something against president or some ministers, or investigated something, or just made some satirical video about the government. They put you in jail as a hooligan, as a drug addict. They intervene massively in your private life, as was the case with Khadija Ismailova, I think the bravest journalist in Azerbaijan, who was investigating president's family business. The last person who did it was killed in 2005, editor of Monitor journal, Elmar Husseiner. And what we ended up with, basically her sexual life was filmed and it was put online. So yes, freedom of internet, and that actually company which had this hosting is in Texas, yeah. And we cannot take it down because the guy who is owning it, he's just refusing to do it. So there is some pro bono lawyers dealing with this, but this is freedom of internet used by Autocracy 2.0. Of course, it is hard to prove. Of course, the government will deny this, and it was interesting because Khadija, by the way, all this was happening in my flat, because I went to study in London and gave my keys to Khadija so she can take care of my flat. So as we found out, it was not just her taking care of my flat, but more than that. So, and now my friends, I'm going back in July, my friends, and say, oh yeah, let's meet soon in Baku, but not in your flat. So, yeah, because it was became a center of, this Truman Show industry in Azerbaijan. And, well, yes, internet in Azerbaijan is free, right? Quoting the government of Azerbaijan. And we are a member of the Council of Europe. And this government just hosted, the most expensive party in Europe called Eurovision Song Contest, which was watched by more than 120 million people around the world. And they invested $700 million in this party. And as a member of the Council of Europe, it's amazing. I think the most recent interesting report about our relationship with Europe was published at ESI.com, which is European Stability Initiative. And the report was basically called How Azerbaijan Silenced Council of Europe. Somehow, and it's really interesting report, and it has a special chapter, Caviar Diplomacy. And the report is about basically naming all the European politicians for the last 10 years who have been recruited and employed and who got to Azerbaijan praising the rigged elections in Azerbaijan. The narrative of this government is we're young democracy. But in 2010 I was in jail, and I remember I looked how elections were happening. The elections would happen like people would get the closed ballot papers and would ask to put it in box. They didn't even were allowed to open and look what was ticked there. So in 2010 we ended with a parliament where you have 0 member of opposition in parliament. So it is really interesting to see some Western diplomats basically reinforcing this narrative. Oh yeah, this is young democracy. I'm saying no. Since 2010 we're officially young autocracy. Okay, and so all these narratives, one of the spheres which we trying to expose all these ideas and contradictions is online. Unfortunately, the picture is not as wonderful as government wants to paint it, even with access to internet. And Kate Pierce, who is here in the audience, she just referred to a CRRC research which was showing that there is only 7% of people in Azerbaijan have daily access to internet. So it's not just enough, I use internet once a month, checking some, dating sites. No, everyday access is something else. So it's just 7%. Coming back, I'm finishing. I know we have little time and more time for discussion. The topic censorship 2020 is very good, but I also, by nature positive person, I want to talk about freedom 2020 because we have to think nothing is local anymore. Nowadays, when I meet with anyone, in Europe and US, I try really to find out if they worked for Azerbaijani government, are working or will work in the future, because you never know. It's so mixed up. This is really nothing is local, everything is global. It's a global struggle for freedom, and I think it's very important for a country like Azerbaijan, and also with internet freedom, to what we can do. We can use, I think, these alliances of freedom and democracy network on a global level to challenge the local autocracies, which go very global, and they come to US. They get one of you, they pay you, and they make you to work for them. So nothing is local, everything is global, and I think what can be done, and that's what tiny civil society in Azerbaijan is trying to do, is finding allies in US, in Europe, in India, I don't know, in China, anywhere, like people who can join the efforts and expose injustice on global level, on a global public sphere. And I think this is something very classical, it's very basic, but in spite of internet, in spite of us discussing censorship 2020, I think the very basic, human needs and desires and connections are very, very central in confronting the most, technological tools which are used, but again, to fight something which was there since humanity existed.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to open it up to the audience for questions. I will try to recognize you. I'm not in the best position to do that. Maybe I'll stand up here. Okay, Mike. Please, if you would, several things. Identify yourself. If you have a question for a particular member of the panel, please do it. And questions, please, not extended speeches. So
it would be great if we could get the speaker to just restate the question so we can have, have the speaker restate the question so we can have it on audio for our webcast.
Okay. Please.
This is for Emin. At the Dublin conference last week, you challenged Azerbaijani government members to a debate about the open internet and how they should go about it at the IGF, Internet Governance Forum at the UN. The UN has not been, they've been a little bit too bureaucratic when it comes to the complaints of member states about people coming to voice activism there. Do you think that they would allow activism in their meetings, or the 2005 example, and there's recent examples where people have tried to voice complaints about internet freedom at UN meetings. Do you think that they have learned?
And in the Sharm el-Sheikh IGF also,
right.
There were problems relating to people voicing opinions against China.
Yeah, because they're member states, they've got their rights, but people go in and they try to, they think that because they're member states that you are not allowed to, if someone complains, then you're not allowed.
Well, Dublin conference was OSCE conference, so it was in Dublin. Mm-hmm. And then what we had, people I met from UN was at UN in Geneva.
It was Geneva.
So what, two different things. So I had a Dublin conference, OSCE conference in Dublin. Basically, it didn't start with Azerbaijani government representatives, trying to challenge my narrative. It started with representatives of Russian Federation. That's another interesting. We had two representatives of Russian Federation standing and basically complaining why, for the second panel on OSCE conference, we are keeping talking on Azerbaijan and on freedom of expression in Azerbaijan. So it was really, I was enjoying this moment, the brothers in arms, two autocracies supporting each other, and I liked it, and my answer to them was, actually I take criticism of my Russian colleagues. I agree Azerbaijan is too small. It's too much attention on Azerbaijan, so next conference, please do it on Russia. And invite, instead of me, Navalny, if by then he won't be in jail. So, this is reinforcing what I was telling. This is really not a local issue. This is a global struggle, and, you can clearly identify, who is standing on which side. Sometimes it gets, even in US, complicated, but during this program, we had Rebecca McKinnon, who was very critical also of U.S. government, and I enjoyed her, giving speech, criticizing, putting out the issues, criticizing U.S. government, and then thanking U.S. government for giving this opportunity at UN, to criticize U.S. government and everyone else, on these issues. Unfortunately, not every government is like this, and of course, every government has problems, every nation. But we are not there yet, so we have these cases. And about UN, well, I don't know about UN. I know about IGF coming up in Azerbaijan in November. So I had talks with a lot of people and asking me also in UN, and always, what should we do? Do you think it should be boycotted? Do you think it should? Is this a good idea? Should we send high-level delegations? Should we say, maybe more low-profile people? Should we? And I was saying, look, it's not about boycotting, and the contexts are different. Okay, Azerbaijan is not North Korea, not even China in a way, or Iran. They claim internet to be free, so they want to host this big event, on basically, on the internet, and I think it's a very good thing. Exactly as with Eurovision, I was against boycott of Eurovision. I'm against boycott of these big events in Azerbaijan. I think there is a space to come to Azerbaijan and then to challenge the government, on issues they don't want to be challenged, and exactly as we did with Eurovision. And I think this is exactly the moments where we can, with our allies all around the world, to put up panels, which government will hate, to have, but they will, through pain, will have to accept it. Let's say having Khadija Ismailova talking about her own experience with internet freedom in Azerbaijan, maybe telling about how free internet is, that it can even get into her private life, and then being, on the internet. So I think it is a good thing that IGF is going to happen in Azerbaijan. I know UN is not the only organization which has impact on this particular. There are Internet Society, there are other associations, civil society, international media, which have impact on shaping the platform. And I think this is a good opportunity. And on that Dublin conference, what I said to a government representative and one of the owners of the biggest news agency in Azerbaijan, I said, well, because they were complaining that I'm not objective, not balanced, I said, you know what? From 3rd till 6th November in Azerbaijan, there will be IGF. So you have a chance to prove how free and democratic you are. We can, with you, debate on a state television during IGF, live, and you can show the whole world how free and democratic you are. Why don't you do that?
Mike Nelson with the Internet Society, and also a professor here at Georgetown. I'm also a journalist with the Bloomberg government. I think it's interesting with the Internet Governance Forum that we had the World Summit on the Information Society in Tunisia, where they were forced to open up a little bit. Then Egypt was forced to open up a little bit. We seem to see this series of places where the meeting itself caused a little more space for debate and dissent. But my question is actually for you, Mr. Othman. This is a wonderful panel because it's like the Internet Society. We got geeks, we got lawyers, we got journalists, we got the full range of the Internet Society. But unlike most of our panels, the geek is wearing a tie.
They cheat me,
We spent a lot of time thinking about the future, though, and I want to talk a technology question for you. You're talking about these tools. Every time we come up with a new tool to provide better encryption, more anonymity, censors come up with tools.
Yeah.
Are we winning? Are we going to be able to have the tools we need in a few years to really have a free space for debate?
Actually, yes. From our experience, till August 2011, we were using our tools to hide ourselves on the internet. So actually, we win this war. Okay. So the regime start to shut down the internet in some areas.
Okay.
That's when they cannot. Monitor all of the traffic of the internet.
So they went nuclear.
Exactly. So they found that it's better to shut down the internet than bringing another and paying a lot of millions for nothings. Because also with DPI inspection technology that the regime is now using in Syria, we won this war over using, for example, PPTP over SSL. So DPI inspection didn't found it, and now we are using it like a charm. Also, SSH, it was a very big challenge for the regime because a lot of companies, they are using it and rely on it, banks, etc. So if they block it, they will face a big problem, economical problem on the country. So we are using OpenVPN modification over SSH. So till now, we are doing it.
So you hide the protests behind bank accounts.
Exactly.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Butler. I'm a constitutional lawyer in town, and I'm also a political blogger. So that makes me a lawyer to everything like that. And my question is, do you have a constitution in the European Council that allows you to bring suits for these violations in the Court of Human Rights Council in Geneva? And are there cyber-stalking laws that somehow immunize governments in Europe? In other words, there are cyber-stalking laws that would prevent that sort of action here because you could sue a municipality potentially, maneuvering around some remedies. So my question is, I'm not sure what your charges were, or why you got in jail back, but is there an avenue to bring a complaint for you in the International Court of Human Rights?
Are you talking about Council of Europe,
Could you repeat the
Court
question?
of Human Rights?
Just so we could hear it, the question was, is there a way of raising this as an
There's two angles that I see as a lawyer that I don't know what your exact charge
Are you talking about European Court of Human Rights?
Yeah,
there's for Council of Europe?
And then there's a council in Geneva that allow human rights violations for the Council of Europe under the UN Human Rights Council. Okay, so there's two different venues. There's a Human Rights Council in Strasbourg, the international, that court in Strasbourg, and then there's the UN venue in Geneva. And I mean, depending on what your charges were and what your counter potential was to go after the government for cyber-stalking issues potentially, I'm wondering if you've investigated that.
Yeah, so the question is if there are ways, legally on international level to protect yourself. Well, in Azerbaijan's case, I think other countries are not members of the Council of Europe. That is interesting thing about Azerbaijan is we have jurisdiction of European Court of Human Rights, which is actually a very serious issue. My case is now in European Court of Human Rights.
It is, okay.
I'm, me and my friend Adnan, it's a case against government of Azerbaijan.
Right, okay.
So legally everything seems fine, but we have been sentenced for 2.5 years. We have been released after 16 months. Now 16 months has passed, 2.5 years has passed, but there is still no decision of European Court of Human Rights. So we could spend the whole time till the last day in jail, and the decision of European Court of Human Rights still wouldn't be there. It's still not there. So the problem with this is, and that makes the case of Azerbaijan particular very specific and interesting, is before, in 2001, when Azerbaijan became a member of the Council of Europe, we had more than 700 political prisoners. So all of them have been released after negotiations with the Council of Europe. And I was back then, I was a lawyer, I was doing case summaries of 40 of them. Now the government, they put people like me in jail. They don't put me, for like defamation law or something like this. They, you have to understand, I'm sitting in a restaurant, two people come, beat me up, and then they put me in jail, and then say you have beaten them up. So, the cameras on the street which could show that who did it were denied. Out of 9 witnesses, they didn't allow any witness to talk. So then they say, look, this is not political, but why you are talking about political prisoners in Azerbaijan? Actually, it's maybe just a bad court. We're a young democracy. So why don't you go to European Court of Human Rights? We're a European country. There is jurisdiction, so please go. So people go, but the thing is, they understood they don't need to jail someone like me for 20 years or 100 years. They can do it for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. You spend a year, 2 in jail, 3, and then they release you. That's their tactics. It's very smart. It's very crafty in a way, what they are doing. So this, I understand you as a lawyer, because you have a legal approach, or let's approach it legally. This is not a legal problem. This is something, and that was my point when I was explaining this online, offline stuff, and these new sorts of autocracies, because that's my problem I had working for international NGOs some time ago, that these experts come, or you have European politicians coming to Azerbaijan for 2-3 days and then making statements, oh, that was great election, or you have these legal experts coming, oh, you have an excellent law, it's excellent, and all this on state television, reinforcing basically what the government trying to sell inside and outside of the country. So it's not a legal issue, it's something else. And I hope I tried to explain the real situation.
Please.
I just have a question for Mr. Prakash. Sorry, I'm Liz Carter. I'm a China analyst. I work at Georgetown. My question is, you said basically the laws we have now to protect or guarantee internet freedoms are inadequate, and we need kind of new laws that extend beyond nation states. What do you think would have to happen for a country that did not want to give up sovereign rights or control of the internet for them to feel that it was in their interest to concede some of that to some higher international system of laws? Sorry, that's a big question. But.
Yes, just to restate, the question was when countries themselves aren't, what could possibly incentivize nation states to give up some of their powers? I think that's actually a separate question from the first part of what you said, which was about putting restrictions. The way a constitution puts restrictions on the actions of a government in Bill of Rights or fundamental rights, etc. How can we put restrictions on corporations? I think for that first part, I think nation states would be more than happy to do so. Okay. The second part, and the trouble with the first with doing so is that you have to make it very limited. You can't put the same kinds of restrictions on a corporation as you do on the government. It is, it goes against its property rights. It goes against our notions of the freedom of contract and the ability for the corporation to enter into any kind of contract with its users, etc. It violates many of our many fundamental thinkings about law in many ways. Okay, so that's a really difficult problem, but there is an incentive for governments to step in there. I don't really see them having a problem. The second part is much more difficult to answer because I actually have no answers to that. It's something that very smart people much smarter than I, have been working towards for more than for around 2 decades now, thinking about issues of internet jurisdiction, how to fix that. That, for instance, also is a similar problem. It's actually part of the same problem. How when every country decides that this is the law that we'll apply, you can't have every country's law applying equally to the internet. You can't just map out the boundaries of a nation state onto a global internet. It just can't work. Whether it's on the basis of servers being located, which has traditionally been the basis for jurisdiction. But in the Information Technology Act in India, for instance, explicitly states that this has extraterritorial effect in 2 of its sections, which is extraordinary. I've never seen any other law like that. But
do it all the time in the U.S.
So in America, by contrast, you have situations where a Spanish website, rojadirectas.com, was seized by the Immigration and Customs Department here in the United States, despite it having been held to be legal by a Spanish court. Okay, so and that, unlike say when Egypt blocked off internet in Egypt, that affected Egyptian citizens alone. It didn't affect anyone else. Traffic passing through Egypt was unaffected. Okay, similarly, the Great Firewall of China affects Chinese citizens. Yet this affected not just people in America, affected people elsewhere. Okay, so how do you work with that fact? Okay, and map out local laws onto a global internet just cannot work. So in order to have a seamless global internet, nation states have to, and we see this practically, have to give up some of what they have so far considered their sovereign rights, because even these global treaties, such as the ICCPR, are eventually mapped onto domestic laws. That's how they operate.
I'm sorry, I just think you're being unrealistic. I'm Bob Forston. I'm from Google. We deal with these problems every day. You know, find me a government that's going to give up power, and I'll find you a government that's going to be out of power.
Well,
I think you're being, you know, nicely idealistic, but
I do take that criticism, except that I see no future, because it's not possible, for instance, for corporations and civil society to.
Possible. It's happening today. The Turkish have one law, the Thais have another. We deal with it.
And
we're in court a lot, but we deal with it.
Except that Google's one of the few companies to actually go ahead with that. Now, for instance, what the Indian government is asking is for servers to be physically located within India. Now, if different companies don't agree to that, Indian companies will definitely agree to, like say for instance your competitor Rediff in India might well agree to engage in increased surveillance. Yahoo has taken the Indian government to court about a fine that was levied against Yahoo. I know of no Indian company that's actually done anything similar.
This sounds like a non-tariff trade barrier in real goods. I mean, you'll see a WTO for the internet.
You can go to the WTO.
Sorry?
You can go to the WTO.
Yeah, well, that's not good.
Against Chinese censorship, actually, the American government did go to the WTO, looking at Chinese censorship as a trade barrier, non-tariff trade barrier.
Please.
So this is kind of related. We've talked a lot about censorship.
Please identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Naomi Gingold. I'm from WAMU, and I also I'm a graduate student here at Georgetown. We've talked a lot about censorship in the online space. Some others as well, and I think something that to me gets glossed over a lot, and it was mentioned some, is the actual physical internet when you're talking about servers. And I find, like, for example, that Mubarak can shut off the internet by shutting off the one spigot, the one pipeline bringing the internet to Egypt, for example. What kind of things are being done to maintain the openness of the internet on a physical level, so that more, whether it be more cables being strung under the ocean, I don't know, but it's also, I feel like, a very opaque kind of area that's not really well known, especially here in the U.S. We feel like thinks about it much.
Somebody on the panel want to jump in on that?
I think
the physical, just having enough bandwidth.
Yeah, exactly. I think I can answer this question. It's related to the economical situation of the country. I mean, for example, let's talk about Syria. They don't have this enough bandwidth to open a data center for a company in the country. That's exactly what you are talking about. So finding another sources, for sure it will be these cables inside the oceans, so they can expand the bandwidth of the traffic in their country. It's, as I told you, it's related with the economical situation of the country, with their own project for the future of their countries. So it's not related with any another, political side or international side or any another things. I mean, it's just related with the decision of this country. So if they need, they can expand it. If not, they cannot. But I hope that someday we can have the same right of the same laws like there is a law talking about the water for each person in the world. They have to have this amount of water per day. So I hope someday we can have a new law talking about each person. He must have this amount of traffic every day. I mean, so it can solve the problem.
Well, I guess my part of that is, why is it just the decision of the country and the government? Why do we accept that as the norm?
Sorry, it's not accepted. We have arguments with governments every day about this exact thing. I can give you an example. In a former SSR, I won't name the country, but they told us that unless we put servers in their country, we could no longer offer services and products in that country. And we said no, and they withdrew because they were economically dependent on having our services.
Yes. I think it's quite hard. I mean, I see all of your points, but it's still quite hard. For example, in my country, as I said, most of the traffic goes goes through state-owned telco. So if the government wants to hold control on the internet, they would just try not to give any more lists and permits for throwing a cable through the Caribbean Sea and connecting to many points. At least points that they would not be in control of. So I think it's quite hard, but I think it can be achieved, especially if the economic incentive is clear enough for a country to have more access to a bigger bandwidth, more connections, a more reliable interconnection for the country. Then, I mean, that's pressure on the country. Eventually, I guess, in many cases, the government will eventually side with the option, including less control, but more access to the internet. I guess that's my point.
What's the situation in Cambodia and Burkina Faso? We're talking about the free internet, but we know it's not actually free in terms of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
How many competing companies are providing service in your countries, and how much does it cost for a monthly subscription to even dial-up modems?
Well, if we look at the physical arrangement of like kind of internet access, mostly it's highly concentrated only in the urban area, like mostly in the Phnom Penh, which is the capital city. But what is fortunate for Cambodian is that mostly the business, like at the cafe shop, at the kind of restaurant, they always provide the free Wi-Fi access. Oh. Yeah, we very surprised compared to the European where I visit, and even the hotel did not provide the internet. But in Cambodia, everywhere, like mostly at the restaurant, cafe shop, you can access to internet free. And also, like with the advanced... Is that because they're trying to attract tourists, or what's the business plan there? I think they try to attract the young geek, and like for the business profit. Like when people go into the cafe shop, they will purchase something beside the, like they want to use internet, but then they have to drink at least a cafe. Mm-hmm. Yes, so it's a kind of business-oriented promotion. But also, like with the rising of the mobile, like with the mobile provider, the telecom provider, we are like very we got a lot of mobile and internet service provider compared to neighboring country. Like we have up to nearly 12 mobile provider. 12? Yes. Wow. With a very small population, only 14 million population. And compared to Vietnam or Thailand, we are completely significant. Like, but if you look at the structure of this business structure, like if we have more business, there should be more competition and price should be lower down. But in fact, it's more controlled by the government. Like, the business cannot compete fairly. They have to corrupt. They have to give some incentive to the government, so the price still high. Like the mobile phone is high, and the internet, access to internet with the modem is still high price.
What's the situation in Burkina Faso? Is it just one carrier, or do you have several companies competing to provide service?
Okay, thank you. In Burkina Faso, we have now more access to internet because the price of connection to internet loud, and we have during the vacancies of people, we have many training how to use internet, how to use Facebook, and we have more people who are very interested by this training. And fortunately, our government don't control the access to internet because it's we haven't policy about internet in Burkina Faso because it's a new tool for us, and they are writing now the policy about the use of internet. So what is now control is when we put our article in on internet, and the people have the possibility to talk about what we to deal with the topic of article. So sometimes we have those who have some discussion which don't respect the law in our country. So we have a control, but it's controlled by the editor of online media. But now our hope is that the interest of this told by the young people, because we have now internet on mobile phone, and we can browse on internet everywhere. And
so are you hopeful? Is less censorship in the future? And what about the countries around you in West Africa? Do you think we're going to see less censorship and more freedom?
What we want is more control of using. But our hope is if we have more access and less control, we can use this opportunity to promote human rights and the freedom of speech. So we have a lot of hope about freedom of speech, and for instance, the access of internet and the access of materials, because it is sometimes the lack of the material. But when you have in a family, if I have a computer, this computer is the all our family, so I can use it. My brother can use it, and so on and so forth. So we hope that when we will have the possibility to buy computers, and we will make many changes in our country, because our those who are living in rural villages, they want to use internet, they want to use laptops to increase their activities. And we have in Burkina Faso every week internet, the week of internet. Mm-hmm. And during this week we have the possibility to buy computers and to deal with the advantage of internet for our society and for our works. And
who organizes that?
It's the government.
The government does.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. One very patient question here.
I'm sorry.
Please.
Actually, just responding to the...
Identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Seamus. I work for New America Foundation at the Open Technology Institute. And responding to the question about why can't we create our own infrastructure? Why can't we just lay fiber optic by ourselves across the ocean? There actually are a lot of groups all over the world. Athens, Brazil, Italy, South Africa. Oh gosh, I could keep going for quite a while. Building mesh networks, which are that kind of interesting. Nothing is local anymore, except we can create local intranets, internets for just ourselves that can reach the external internet through satellite uplinks or delay-tolerant feeds, which means that somebody carries like a suitcase that they go into the town and all the emails jump onto, and they go to somewhere where the internet is, and they can jump back off onto the major fiber optic line. I mean, they're horrible for streaming video and but for blogs and microblogging and news, they become absolutely essential in these areas that are separated. You can provide your own services. You can have a local server, so they have to actually track down house to house who's that guy hosting that server, who has that blog that everyone's reading over here. And it's been quite successfully used in a lot of areas. Has a lot of ways to change and grow in the future. But I think that the nothing is local anymore can actually mean somewhat of a push towards freedom, where it's a lot harder to censor between my phone and your phone than it is when we have to all go through that central pipeline and you can just turn off the spigot.
Do you have a website to tell us more about?
We're going to have time for...
What, just a website on mesh networks?
Commotionwireless.net.
Commotionwireless.net, okay.
We're going to have time for one more.
Sure. Or a lightning round.
Question. Sorry?
A lightning round. You can ask 2 questions.
One online question.
Okay. One online question. Do you want to pass on?
She can go first. Well, the online question is from Rudy Van Znik from ISOC Belgium, and he was curious if anyone on the panel is pro-ACTA and have any thoughts about using ACTA for these governments to close down channels.
Sorry?
The anti-copyright.
Yeah.
Anti-counterfeiting trade agreement.
Actually, in Syria, I think we don't have this internet law, so actually they don't respect any kind of law. So it's free on this side. I mean, there is no any law to deal with this kind of copyright or etc. etc. So you can go and buy Microsoft Office by $1 from the street, and nobody respects the copyright. It's because of the government. I mean, they spend all the money on censorship and surveillance, and not on the education, on educate the people about the copyright. So I cannot answer this question.
Short example from my experience. I remember, I was making money and still do sometimes as interpreter. Good. And once I was interpreting for one EU expert who came to give a seminar in Azerbaijan on copyright. And after we gave seminar, we went for a dinner, and on his way, he went to a shop where he bought a lot of CDs and DVDs, which were against copyright. So that was a very interesting experience.
I want to give some of the panelists who haven't recently spoken, since we're unfortunately going to have to wrap this up. I wish we could go on all night. This is really great. Any other sort of closing comments based on what you've heard?
Well, I do have a comment. It's not precisely on ACTA, but it's related. Many times, many Western governments, many industrialized nations and established democracies make up laws for, basically controlling what they fear online. So they fear terrorism, they fear violations of IP, they fear many things. Just like non-democratic governments fear other things, but they just don't care about IP. They don't care about terrorism in most cases. It's not a problem. But they care about dissent. And many of the things that are designed into laws that many times can be used and abused for controlling content online are used as an excuse for less democratic governments to censor the web. So it's just instead of claiming that this country is if a country wants to claim that another one is censoring the web and censoring dissent, well, this government will probably say, well, it's okay because I'm censoring the web in the same way you're doing it. So, of course, that this doesn't mean that you can have law enforcement online, but it does mean that the laws have to be careful because in most cases, I mean, most governments just take up ideas from more industrialized nations when they're making their own policies. So it is important that they are very well balanced in a way that they don't allow for abuse in their own countries, because that abuse and that leeway for abuse and extra legal actions in part of the government will probably be taken up as a great idea and as an excuse also by less democratic governments.
How many of the panelists think that the internet will be more free in the United States in 2020 than it is today? Thumbs up, thumbs down.
I refuse to answer yes or no question.
I need to add a comment about this sentence because in Syria we found new concepts in using mobiles with the revolution. So Android mobile has become the common mobile because it's flexible to make the security and etc. etc. But Google Play is forbidden in Syria because of the law to stop the trading between Syria and America since 2004. And we are paying the cost of this block because we are spending a lot of time to block, to open the market to download the application. So I hope you can help us to send a message for the decision makers here in USA to open the Google Play at least for the people in Syria, because really we need it in Syria to use Android. You are showing the news. We are trying to publish the news over this mobile, so it's a blog, and we are trying to open it now. And thank you.
Please, just one idea, as in the one positive thing I could possibly see, just theoretically, is that instead of an internet, a network of networks, if we transform it into a gigantic mesh network, which would just be a single network that's in a sense connected, right? And that could possibly be one way to increase internet freedoms, but otherwise I think I'm in this bunch. I'm the cynic. I don't really see things getting much better, and yes, I do agree with Bob that what I'm expressing is not idealism, but more the fact that has to happen if certain things have to be preserved. Do I think that's actually gonna happen? Not really. Okay, and which is why I had difficulty answering that question. I don't see how we can incentivize governments to actually do that. So I'm cynical about a non-fragmented internet. I see greater balkanization in the future.
Not a positive note to end on.
Well, I don't know. I think it was a very positive panel.
Yes.
I hats off to Marine House and the State for bringing these people here. I learned far more from this discussion than I do most events like this I attend in Washington. It's a real credit to you, and I have a great deal of admiration for you as individuals, because in your own national settings, you're doing things that I can only imagine the degree of difficulty that goes along with it. So you deserve as much support as you can get from those like us who are pretty far removed. But two things I come away with. One, nothing's local anymore. I think it's hard to talk about Azerbaijan or Syria or Cambodia or Burkina Faso or Venezuela or India in isolation, or the United States. We're all part of this broader community. And the question is going to be whether those who see that as a threat are going to be as creative as you have been thus far to keep you from being more open, and us as well. I wish there were a way of sort of putting this all together, but that's